another Fly High for Fun production. Hey guys, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe. Alright guys, thanks for tuning in and watching my YouTube video. Today I'm going to walk you through how to bypass the BMS on the discharge side. So right now we're just taking off the covers and we're going to jump right on in and get started. Alright, first things first is we need to disconnect the positive. All positive polarity current needs to be disconnected from the BMS. So what we're going to do first is we're going to disconnect the balance lead plugs. So we'll take that off first. And then once we have that disconnected, we'd be safe to go ahead and pull the BMS out. As well as disconnect the negative from the battery negative from the BMS. So let's go ahead and do that. All right, so we're on the side where the negative is of the battery. So what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna go ahead and take off some of the stuff surrounding the battery. This is actually something that I made to extend more space in the battery. When I actually started building my bike, I found that this frame was a little closed off and I needed a little bit more space. So what I did was I cut this little lip off and then I created this thing here, which is acting like a ½ an inch more. So it brought the battery out. So this was a good modification to allow me to have a little bit more space so that the battery wouldn't be so cramped up inside the frame. And right now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take my wires out. I have them all tucked in here. I'm just gonna pull them out and I'm gonna disconnect them one by one. I have one here that's actually, there's actually 3 connections here. So there's one that goes to my charging port, and there's one that goes to my controller, and then there's another one that goes to my my DC to DC step down converter. So I have my DC to DC step down converter. It's in here. I would actually have to take the battery out in order to show you that. But what I'm going to do is just go ahead and unplug it. We're going to unplug the charging port as well as the main controller connection. I'm using a QS8 plug on this. It has anti-spark, so it doesn't spark when you plug it up. A lot of times when you're pulling, you know, this amount of voltage, what happens is it'll spark when you go to plug it up. So now that I have all of my wires disconnected here, it is safe now to go ahead, and we also have the positive wires disconnected from the BMS. It is now safe to disconnect this right here from the negative side. Now, one thing I just noticed in going in here, I noticed that this wire is getting hot. You see how it's right here, it's melted? That's something that that I'm gonna be looking into. You know, like you're saying, it's pulling all this wattage and this stuff's getting hot. So that's something that I may need to check going forward. I'm not sure if I'll have to add more gauge wire to this or what, but I'm actually using a balance plug, or actually, yeah, this is a bullet connector that's connected to here, and it's getting hot there. So maybe when I put this back together, I'll cover that up so if it does get hot, it doesn't create a problem. So let me go ahead and get this disconnected. All right, so I just took a little bit of pulling on that to get that to come apart. So I'm gonna flip around and I'm gonna go ahead and pull the BMS out. But before I do that, so let's just take a look at the wiring here. This wire right here that's going to the controller, I'm actually using 8 gauge on it. I may want to change it to 6 gauge, which is the actual size wire that's coming off the battery. So I do have a little bit of 6 gauge left that I'm gonna use. So I'll be showing you guys in the video me actually taking this off, and then we'll desolder this off, and then we'll put this piece right here 6 gauge so that it'll tap into not actually this, because this is actually the C- side, but I'll show you guys as we progress through the video where we're going to connect it. Everything else will connect to this C- side. These other negative wires, again, there's 3. So we have one that's going to the charge port. We have one here that's feeding the DC to DC step down converter that's in the back. And then the other one is going to the actual controller. So we're just gonna cut this off, replace this with a bigger gauge wire, and then we'll get that tapped into the BMS. All right, so we're flipped around here on the back side. We're gonna go ahead and slide our BMS out. May take a little fidangling here to get this out. It's kind of in here and it's tight. So let me just try to finagle it out of this place. See if I can get it. I may need to take this off, but I'll try not to. So looks like we're caught up on the bottom just a tad bit, but we're slowly working our way out. So we're out, and let me just get it disconnected. All right, so what I'm gonna do here is I need to get the battery out. This battery, again, is 50 amp hours. It's a lot. It's in here really tight. So what I'm gonna do is just try to turn it to the side, maneuver it out. If I could get the back side out, then it'll be able to slide its way down. Like that. And then we could just take it out and we'll set it on this chair. So now the battery is out. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go ahead and disconnect the positive. As you can see, I have it taped off right here. So it's insulated, so it'll never touch anything. So we'll disconnect the positive from this, and then all the wires here are gonna be going, we do need to disconnect this because this is going to my light switch. The current that comes from the battery, the 84 volts, 72 volts, is going into my light switch. I don't know if you guys can see that on the inside there. And what happens is when I turn the light switch on and off, that sends the voltage through everything else. So that's how I kind of control the voltage. If I'm not using it, I just turn it off. And so that's gonna stop the voltage from going to the DC step down converter. And so that's how that handles all of that. It stops all the current from going to any other place. So that just kind of explains that. I do have a fuse box and all my wirings in there, which is kind of dangling right now. We'll put that back in at the end. Okay, so it might be nice to go ahead and do an inspection on the positive wire since we did see some melting on the negative wire. And I just took the tape off of this and it doesn't look like anything's melting or any signs, anything like that. So just gonna pull this off, okay? We now have our wiring disconnected, fully disconnected. That's going to the BMS. We'll set that on over there. This right here, we definitely want to cover it up. We don't want anything, this to touch, short out. So we're just gonna cover that up in the meantime, because that is the positive wire, and we should be good to go. So now let's go ahead and let's walk over here by the BMS. We'll find it on the floor, and this is it. So let's get started. All right, guys, we're on the bench with the BMS now, and we're just gonna take a quick look at it. We have here our B- side right here. Of course, this wire came off. We're gonna fix that in the end. But this is the B- side. This is the C- side. This is the side that you're gonna charge. You're really supposed to you're really supposed to be drawn off of this side of the BMS, and on this side of the BMS is going to control everything through the BMS, the amount of amps that you pull and everything. And that's the reason why I'm being governed by this BMS because I'm drawing from this side. So when I say bypass the BMS, what I'm saying is I'm going to be drawing from the B minus side instead of the C minus side. So again, I think I've explained it. This goes to the controller. And so we're going to cut this negative wire off, and we need to get it on this side. So before we do that, I need to find a way to get it connected. And what I'm seeing on this side of the BMS is that right here in this spot, I'm going to have to sand this down to get to copper. And then once I get to copper, I'm going to take this wire. Again, I said that I would use 6-gauge wire. And we're going to put it right here. It's going to look exactly like this other one. It's going to be going in the same direction. It's going to be soldered down here, and then we're going to use a bullet plug. Now, what I've been doing is I've ordered a bunch of these QS8s, and what I do is I like using the bullet plugs. So I'll take one and I'll destroy it, pull the bullet plug off out of the connector. And so, as you see here, I've already taken one apart. So I'm basically going to use this fitting here. We're going to put it on that and solder it, and we'll put a little bit of shrink wrap around it. And then we're going to take this other side, and it is 8-gauge. I think I'm going to use it because I don't have any more 6-gauge wire. So I'm just going to cut this off, and we're going to put this plug on the end of this. Okay, so let me go ahead and get started sanding this down. We just want to sand this down until we reach copper. And as you can see here, slowly but surely, we're going to get copper. Now what they do is they put this green coating over the board to kind of protect it so it's not exposed, doesn't touch anything. But if you ever want to tap into a circuit board, this is what you do. You just sand the stuff right on off. So we're going to get this sanded down, and then we're going to move to the soldering stage next. Alright, so now that we got that sanded off to copper, we're going to go ahead and apply a little bit of flux to this area. And what that's going to do is that's going to suck the flux in. Now we got to be very careful, because when we do this, that's going to transfer the heat to the opposite side of this plug, and then we'll have a problem because the other plug underneath it's going to come loose. So I don't know how I'm going to maneuver my way around that, but we're just going to do this in stages. We're going to put a little bit over here and a little bit over there. We're not going to put too much heat on this, and then we're going to let it cool off. So let's see what happens. Alright, so this is my soldering iron I'm using here. It's kind of a digital welding iron. We're going to go ahead and turn it on. I have it set to, I think, 500 degrees or something like that. So again, we don't want to have too much heat on this. So, but we do need it to be hot enough so it'll melt and it'll get that stuff on there. So looks like we're going way above 500 degrees here. So let me get it down, and then we'll go ahead and get that soldered on. Alright, so let's go ahead and clean off the tip. You always want to start off with your soldering iron with the clean tip. So we're going to use this to wipe it off. Usually you know it's clean when you get down to your solder. You can see solder on your soldering iron. So just clean that up good. And then we're going to put a little bit of solder on this. And then we're going to apply it to here. You see that? It's just adhering really well. That's what that flux will do. And we just want to do it in stages. We don't want it to get too hot. Alright, so now that we got that solder on there, we're going to go ahead and get ready to prep our wire to get that attached. Alright, so we're going to need about this much of the wire cut back. So let me go ahead and do that now. Again, I'm using 6-gauge wire on this. It's the same gauge that's coming off battery. So we'll cut a little bit of that back. And then what I should have done before I did that was put some flux on this first before I peeled that off. So if you're doing it, just word of advice, it'll be a little bit easier if you leave your silicone on there. Take a little bit of flux, dip your cable in the flux like this, so you have a little bit at the tip, and then you're gonna grab your soldering iron, put a little bit of flux on there, and you see how nasty it looks after you use it. Always want to keep it clean, so clean it off. Put a little bit of flux on your soldering iron, a big glob, and then you take your wire and you just set it on it. What that's doing is it's going into the braid, and it's gonna keep all your wires together. Like, you don't want this to fray out, you just want that to stay together. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put a lot on that, and when we come back, it's gonna be ready to be soldered down. Let me go ahead and get that dressed up. Before I dress it up, I'm gonna actually, you know what? Let me do that now. So I'm gonna put the bullet plug on here. I'm gonna need a little bit of flux in here, and we're gonna put this right here like this. And we're gonna go at it. We're gonna load it up. We're gonna put some flux on it. I mean, not flux, but solder. So let's go ahead and get that done. All right, guys. So we have the bullet plug. It's been soldered on there, nice and easy. So we're gonna go ahead and put on some shrink wrap around that tip, and we should be good to go. All right. So I'm just gonna find the correct size shrink wrap to use. That doesn't seem like it's gonna cut it. Let's go ahead and try this. That looks like that might get the job done. We're just gonna put it up here to about right there. There's a little brim here. We're gonna stop at it. And then we're gonna take, I usually like to use the heat gun. We'll just use the heat gun on it to shrink wrap on down on it. Alright, so now that made it nice and pretty. Shrunk wrapped around that connection. Next, we're going to work on this side, and we're going to get that soldered right here on this side of the BMS. Alright, so let's go ahead and get some solder put on this. Alright, when I come back, it's going to be fully soldered up, and then we're going to be ready to put it down. Alright, so I'm trying to get this soldered down. I'm trying to do it in a way where I don't get a cold joint. Just trying to build the solder up and over this wire. Okay, wanted to give you guys kind of a snapshot of this before I just did it without like actually going over it on camera. So that's what that looks like from that side. And so I'm gonna using this clamp, this little brace thing, to keep it together so it doesn't, the other side doesn't fall off. So I'll be moving this over to the left, and then I'll try to get all the solder in there, and then I'll come back when we're done. All right, so I noticed I had to take these screws off the top of the BMS. So we're gonna take this top plate off, and that's gonna give me some clearance to get over there on that B- side to finish up the joint. We don't want a cold soldering joint. We want that solder to be melted down pretty good, because we're going to have a lot of amps being drawn through there. So that's what I'm doing now, is just basically taking this cover up off the BMS. It's going to give me access to this side to be able to complete the soldering. Alright, so I'm going to put a little bit of tape over these in this one area, just so no solder doesn't get splashed anywhere else and perhaps get on any of my other components on my very expensive BMS. In the past I've done that and I had to buy a whole nother BMS, so just for protection we're going to put that little tape there. Alright, so I finished up the soldering. What I did was I just got it soldered on that side and then I connected it all the way around. So we have one big blob on this B- side connecting both of those wires. Okay, so now we have both of our wires on here. Let's go ahead and get this cover put back on, and then we'll move on to doing the soldering on the QSA. Okay, now we got that cover back on. We'll move to the next step. Alright, so what I'm going to do is unwrap this electrical wire. I'm going after the controller negative. I'm just going to cut it right here. Okay, and now that we have that wire cut, we're just going to wrap this tape back around. And the next step is going to be putting that other bullet connector on that wire. Take a little bit of this tape, finish taping this up. Now we only have two wires off the C- side. One is to charge it, and the other one is to feed the DC to DC step down converter. Okay, so this side is the side that we're going to put the fitting on. That's going to connect to the B- side, which is right here. So let me find that bullet plug connector. Alright, now we got that nice and tinned up on the inside. We're going to go ahead and tin our wire and then get that soldered on. Alright, so we got that bullet plug put on there. We're just going to go ahead and put some shrink wrap around it and we should be good to go. Alright, so this is what we got. Kind of soldered an extra piece of copper on the back just to kind of make sure that those current was passing through top and bottom. I'll probably find some way to cover this up so it's not exposed, and then we'll go ahead and get this installed back into the bike. Alright, so this is what we have here. I found some copper wire 10 gauge and I kind of just made a U right there on the end to kind of make sure that I had decent current going from the top and the bottom on both sides of this, just to help out, just in case that copper soldering pad I used wasn't enough. So I put that together. So now we're just going to go ahead and reassemble this and get it back on the bike, and then we'll get another video put together and test it out. So I just wrapped some duct tape around the whole entire BMS, just kind of covering up that spot. That should be good. If it gets hot, it's not going to really do anything. Probably just melt through that, but I hope it don't get hot. We should be good. Alright, so let's just do a quick walkthrough before I start to put this back together. I have an intelligent DC to DC converter. It converts anywhere from 4860 up to 72 volts, from 12 volts, from 48 or any of those other volts down to 12 volts. We have 10 amp max. That's the reason why I like this. And it just has 3 wires, the red line, yellow, and black. So I'll just set this back here. That's where that goes. This yellow and blue wire is actually the 12 volts. And then you have this red and black that is going gonna receive the 84 volts or whatever nominal voltage is coming from the battery. So here you go, you have my switch on and off. What happens is when I turn that switch on, it's controlling a positive wire on here, so there's a break. So when you turn it off, it stops the polarity for positive from going. When you turn it on, it allows the polarity to go through. So this wire here is going to connect right here. That's where the voltage will come in. The 12 volts will come in. It goes up to this point right here, which will actually connect here. And then this right here will go to the fuse block. So when you turn the switch on, the positive polarity will come in and it'll feed the positive fuse box and anything that's connected to it. So that's pretty much how this setup works. So let me go ahead and get this stuff put together, and then we'll go from there. So you probably can't see that board that I cut out and I put right up in here. The reason why I did that is because, remember when I took the plug off there, it was melting. Well, those are my battery cells right there, and I have some foam cushion right there that's kind of covering up that area over the cells, so in case nothing can touch that. And so I put the board right on top of that, top of the cushion, so that if this thing gets hot, what it's gonna do is it's gonna touch the board and it's not gonna melt down and short out on the battery. So that's what I did to take care of that. Hopefully the wiring is not going to be an issue. If I come back in here and I see there's some more stuff going on, what I'm going to do is basically change out probably this bullet plug, put a new one on there, because it just seems like it's getting hot right here. So got the wood on there for right now, but that should do it. All right, so we got this baby back in. Let's go ahead, take a look. Looks like we have plenty of space in here for the BMS to slide back in here. So let's go ahead and get that installed. All right, let's go ahead and get these balance plugs plugged back in here. We're gonna make sure that we have the battery minus plugged up first before we start plugging anything else in. So let's do that first. All right, so we're on the B minus side, guys. We have two B minuses. Now remember, the whole purpose of my video today was to bypass the BMS on the discharge side. So that's exactly what I've done, which is add two lines on the B minus. One of these lines are going to go to the B minus, right? Battery minus. That's what we're going to use. That's going to take care of the charging needs, balance the cells. That's exactly what we want it to do. We don't want any other purpose for the BMS to serve. We just want it to only balance and charge the cells. And that's it. This other line here, we're going to use that to plug into our discharge, which is this QS8. It's going to go to our controller. And we're going to plug in here, and we're going to discharge from the B minus side of the battery. That way we won't get any interference from the BMS if I decide to pull a bunch of amps that it doesn't like. So that's what we're going to do. Just to be on the safe side, we're going to use some wrap, shrink wrap around this. So when we put this in, I also spreaded these apart because I noticed that when I was sliding them into the bullet connectors, they were loose. And I think that might be a reason why it may have melted, because the contact wasn't as sufficient as it should. So I just pulled this, spreaded those things out to apply some friction, and then I'm going to plug it back in here. And it went in pretty tight, so hopefully that fixed it. So we're going to do is put on our shrink wrap. We'll do that at the end. Same thing goes with the discharge side. I spreaded that apart, and I'm going to put a little bit of shrink wrap on this end, and then we're going to plug it in. And then I'll shrink wrap that off the camera, and I'll be right back. Alright, so we have our B- connected. We should be good to go with connecting everything else. If the B- is not connected on these BMSs, and you connect the positive first, you'll fry out the BMS. So that is the reason why we played special attention, and we connected our B- side up first. So now that we have that done, let's move over to the positive. So let's go ahead and get this positive plugged in. And then the negative. We now have lights. We need to plug in the BMS reset switch that's here. It's just a switch that you press when you want to reset the BMS. Okay, that's in there. This is a switch that I'm talking about. You just press that switch. It resets the BMS. You see the lights are on. We should be good to go. Now we just got to put the wires back in on the other side, get everything closed up, and yeah, we'll be ready to go out for a test ride. Alright, so we got back over here on the other side here. So we're just going to take my wires and just start tucking them in here. Obviously want this B- wire up over the top of everything. So I'm going to see if I can just get it in there. Pretty much running all my wires over the top. Just in here and up and over. Okay, this is this wire that's going to my DC to DC step down converter. We're gonna untangle it from the rest and get this up and over. Okay, now that I got it up and over, I'm just gonna go ahead and plug it back up in its proper place. Okay, the next is the charging wire. This is the charging port. This comes off. I can tell that this is the wire because I ran 10 gauge for charging. So let's get it plugged up into the one that has 10 gauge, which is this one. So we'll go ahead and plug it up. Okay, and then this one, this wire plugs in right here, and this wire is feeding the DC to DC step down converter. So that's how that goes. Now this wire back here is the charge wire, or actually the controller wire. So that plugs in here. Okay, now we have all our wires plugged up except for the positive. I have not plugged in the positive to the positive side of the battery. So let me get this set up so we can do that next. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to run the positive wire up and over the top of the battery. That way it's coming out on the other side. All right, so now we're back on the other side. I'm gonna go ahead and pull my positive wire through. Try to feed it through. Matter of fact, everything that's here can go in and over the top of the battery. It can lay sort of in the back. There's a compartment in the back of the bike that I'm not using that the wires can kind of drop down in. So that's what I'm doing now, is just basically bringing all those XT90s connectors, all the wires that I had in, and tucking them in, dropping them down. And so we have the positive wire that's here. Now this is the positive cable. And you know, I covered this up for a reason, because I didn't want this to touch. This should plug in here. Of course, you're going to get that pop because that's the voltage transferring in to the system. So yeah, it's pretty scary when it happens, you know, kind of wakes you up. Get you on your P's and Q's. But you're going to plug into it like that. Okay. Now, one thing I did before, I think I'm going to do it again on this. Which is to open up that bullet connector. Needs to be opened up because right now it's kind of loose when you plug it in. So what I'm doing is just spreading it. That's what that just did, was spread it so that when I plug it in, it'll be tight. That's that popping again, guys. But now we have it plugged up. Just need to shrink wrap that. So let me shrink wrap that down and we'll be right back. All right, so we got that shrunk wrap down, so we're good. This wire also can be tucked up under here, like that, out the way. And now it's just a matter of putting our side covers back on. Easy peasy. So what I want to do before I put the side panels on is check the BMS. See if I can get it to come online. There's an app that you can use, VBMS. So let me just pull that up real quick, and then I'll see if I can tap into the BMS. And then at that point, I'll know we're good to go. So let me see if I can get it pulled up. Sometimes this thing acts funny. You gotta take the Bluetooth connection off, then you gotta search for it again. And I think this is it, Ant BMS. I have a couple of them in my house, so sometimes it gets confusing which one I'm actually connecting to. I don't think that's it, and that's not it. So what I'm gonna do is hold down the reset button, get the BMS to reset. You hold it down for a couple seconds, then you let it go. It'll start beeping. Then once it beeps, it kind of refreshes itself, and then you can go back in. We're looking for one that says BMS Ant 24. This. All right, so we're gonna try to connect to the BMS, see if we can get it going. All right, we connected. We have 77.6 volts. Just going in to check. Everything's back online. All our voltage is there. So we can go ahead and button her on up. Let me go ahead and get this negative ground wire connected. And then might be a good time to test everything out, make sure the lights and everything are working. Yep, everything's working, so you can move forward. You always want to make sure you check that stuff. You don't want to get buttoned all the way up and then you realize something's not right and you got to go back in. So what I'm gonna do, safety first, I'm gonna put something on this ground. We don't want anything touching, anything shorting out. So we'll use this. All right, easy peasy. Slide this in here. All right, we got the ground wire tucked in there. I made these little adapters as I mentioned earlier on in my video. So we're gonna go ahead and take these little adapters and we're gonna slide them in here underneath the controller box. You have to slide in that crack. Like that, like so. Get this stuff lined up. And now we're gonna go ahead and put the cover back on there. What I did was I put a little bit of duct tape on the back of this because it's all metal. I don't want this thing shorting out any type of way. So I put some tape there to see if I could, you know, insulate it. All right, if you made it this far, you have made it to the end of my video. I just want to say thanks for watching. Right now, the rest of the video here is just going to be me putting the side panels back on. I wanted to go take it for a test ride, but it's raining, storming here in California, so we're not able to take it out. My next video will be on actually testing top speed on this, so please stay tuned, and thanks for watching. Or maybe I'll do a video on this. Maybe we'll take a speed test on the charger for you guys. You never know. Thanks for watching.